Good morning, ball watchers. We are back again with a preview of our second last regular season fixture, our last away game of the season. And we are heading on a hike out to the Pacific Northwest to Vancouver to take on the Whitecaps. But I'm still languishing, Justin, in some of the not languishing. I'm relishing in some of the fun that came about on the weekend with our dub, just an absolute trouncing over the neighbors in Kansas, sporting Kansas City 4-1 here at home at City Park. Man, I'm bummed I missed that in person. And God, it was like the worst weekend that my wife could have picked to go out of town. But you know what? We do what we have to do as fathers. But Justin,
don't talk about Mags like that.
No. You know, she's got to do what she's got to do. And I've got to do what I've got to do. And City did what they had to do because look what happened after the game. And then on Monday as well, we are now 100% locked in as the number one team in the West. No one can catch us at this point. And LAFC has got to be just kicking themselves. They fumbled the bag, man. I mean, coming out of the Leagues Cup especially, this team has just not been the same. And it's not like they had a huge hit or injury crisis or anything. They just have not looked up to it at all to challenge us.
The only thing that's going to come out more about this, Jake, is that the amount of games that they've played. You've seen a lot of different murmurings from coaches, players, everything. I think there's going to be a lot of changes, hopefully, in the offseason, but I think that's going to be a slight excuse from them. And I mean, no offense, but I'll say rightfully so. I think that team has been run into the ground, but also kind of their choice. I think we not purposely, but didn't give it our all in Leagues Cup and Open Cup because we knew how long this season is for some of these guys. And it's their choice if they want to go with that and they don't care about the regular season as much or the MLS Cup as much. So, I mean, do what you want.
And that part of that you can't blame them for. Like they qualify, obviously they won last year, so they got into these other competitions. Like you talk about, they just played the Campeones Cup last week. They lost that fixture. They played in the CONCACAF Champions League. They did not do well in that either. So with that said, though, the CONCACAF Champions League, like we mentioned earlier in the season, is gone. It is now called the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and it's been totally gutted and made a new tournament format starting next year. And guess who locked their position in? You're right. St. Louis City will be featured in this first kind of new installment of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And just a reminder, so this is next year we're talking about. And we qualify because they give a certain amount of bids. We can go through how you can qualify for that. All that you need to know is that there's 27 total teams that get into this tournament. And it's basically like a CONCACAF. When I say CONCACAF, it's like North Americans, all their soccer leagues. So you're talking about the Caribbean, you're talking about, Central America, you're talking about Mexico, Canada, US. Everyone in North America assembles and they qualify into this CONCACAF Champions Cup. And how it is going to be next year is there's going to be two-legged matchups in the first round, so home and away. And then 4 rounds with the final just being one game. That'll be a single leg match on a weekend. But City has qualified because, the Leagues Cup winner qualified, second and third Leagues Cup qualified, and we clinched the West. And if you're not the Supporters Shield winner in their parameters for qualification, the next other conference, and you win that conference, you get in. So we've locked in our position to be in that. It'll be cool. It's going to be, pretty exciting to play against these other teams. I think Leagues Cup was fun. We'll see what happens next year with that as well. But the way they're, marketing this and really setting it up, I think it could be Leagues Cup-esque, pitting some really, really talented teams against each other. So I'm really excited for us. But I will also say that that's going to definitely challenge this backroom staff and coaching and players to condense the calendar a little bit more, have more fixtures to play, especially if you go further in this tournament. So I'm excited about it. It's great exposure for the club and what a way to cap off, at least part of your first year. But all that to say, the champions go on to the FIFA Club World Cup in 2025, which is pretty sick. I mean, we could be playing, some of the biggest clubs in the world if we are to be successful in this tournament.
It's a little back and forth when you're trying to play as many games, but also grow soccer, especially in the U.S. So I go back and forth. I mean, after our first season, I think it was very smart of us to focus on the regular season and going into the MLS Cup. But now I'm excited to get into some of these tournaments and really go full force on that. So anything else on it, Jake? Otherwise, I'm going to bring us through a couple other highlights.
The only thing I want to say is It was funny. Did you see Cincy's coach, Noonan? Obviously, DeSmet grad, love the guy to death. And I think he brought something interesting after they clinched the supporter shield. He kind of just made the case. He's like, this is kind of where we're shifting to actually caring about what carries the most weight in this league is winning the supporter shield versus the MLS Cup. And I say two things. One, very convenient to say that after you just cleanse the supporter shield. But two, I kind of get it. I mean, it's a lot of games to play in a season. And if you come out on top, by the way, by far as much as they have, I'd probably be saying the same thing. I mean, you're consistently the best team in the league.
Yeah, they have 65 points. I mean, we have 2 games left, and we would be probably the next likely to catch them outside of Orlando because we have 56 points. And I mean, we just won't. So they've cleared it with ease with games to go. So it's been impressive for them. I would rather have the MLS Cup. Maybe it's just lucky for me or convenient for me to say that because we're not the supporter shield winner, but whatever. I will say Pat Noonan, we're talking about team of the match day. He was the coach this week. So I wanted to give him a shout out. Just the SMAC guy, St. Louis guy. I'm sure he's been on it plenty of times, but did want to note that because we also had 3 guys on the team as well. Starters, Leuven and Joao, obviously with the amount of assists that Leuven gave and Joao with the 2 goals. And then Roman was on the bench as well, which being on the bench, I don't really fine, whatever, because he played absolutely incredible that game. But it's good to see some of those guys get some of those awards there. Also, MLS Power Rankings, they are not out yet. So we were at 2. We will likely still be right at 2. If not, I highly doubt we're going to be at 1.
No.
ESPN moves us up from 7 to 5. So ESPN is starting to get a little bit smarter, but still leaving us as 5 is ridiculous. But otherwise, other City news. City gets 3 days off we get 2.5 weeks off after the Vancouver game, but 3 days off in between what we played on Saturday. And then we'll also say that we have a friendly possibly coming up on 10-14.
They had the news come out yesterday that they're going to get 3 days off, like off after this Vancouver game because we had the international break, and then they'll return to training probably this weekend. And there will be a friendly that kind of smudged right in the middle of the international break just to kind of stay fresh. But I will say, Justin, we talked about this too during the Leagues Cup, hiatus that we were on. On the other side of that now, you're at the end of the season, basically. I mean, that paid off in dividends for us. I think that rest in the time to get injury guys back, into minutes and into fuller health, not full health. We didn't get Klaus back or Nilsson back right after, but giving those guys time to recover. I think we were worried about would it impact our player performance. I think ultimately it was a positive for us. So hopefully we do the same thing here.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that it's only going to help us with our legs going forward. So I'm very happy with how we've done this season so far. One thing I do want to note, unfortunately, City 2 season is over now. Getting bounced in the first round of the MLS Next Pro playoffs. They had a 2-0 loss to the Quakes 2 at home after having an unbelievable unbeaten streak of almost 3 full months. I believe it was 8 weeks that they had. They picked up 24 points in 10 games during that, which is just an absurd run to get into the playoffs. That's why Sporting didn't want to play them. We ended up getting a home game. They gave up a goal in the 63rd. It was clipped down the right side and a great driven ball in about knee height and a nice finish inside the 6 there. And then the Quakes were possessing across the top. I think we were just beat with our legs in the 87th minute and a nice finish in the upper 90, just outside of the 18. I will say we held our own. We had 17 shots with 4 on goal compared to their 10 shots with 5 on goal. We had 20 fouls in this game compared to their 10. But overall, it just was a hell of a season by the guys. I want to say a huge congrats to AJ and Johnny Klein, St. Louis University guys. And I'm just looking forward. I think it was a great way to look at a farm system for us. And all of these young guys just have a ton of potential coming up.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely a great way to end the season too. If they'd started a little bit better, probably would have avoided being that high of a seed or low of a seed in this case. But still, when you're looking at like you said, a farm system or a team to support your first team, you can't ask for much better. They're emulating the exact same style of play that we're doing in the first team level. I mean, look at that foul count. It's just a spitting image of their older brother. And obviously getting, exposure for some of the players, John Klein getting some minutes with the team as well. Obviously King Glover, Miggy Perez getting minutes down there and Lucas Bartlett, like guys from the first team keeping fresh. So I think, again, very, very happy to have City 2 here. 2 years in the playoffs, out of 2. So a great start for that team and looking to continue that success into the future.
Quick thought, Jake. Now that these guys' season is done, do you see anybody coming up just as like a possible bench player? I mean, like Johnny Klein was absolutely hot, not just calling him out for being a St. Louis guy. He was hot in the MLS Next Pro. Like, do any of those guys get the call up that I'm not saying like Bartlett or Celio or anybody or Miggy, like those guys can obviously be in the rotation, but is there anybody that we haven't typically seen, like Caden Glover? Do you think Johnny Klein, or do you think we're pretty much sticking with our guys?
I mean, I'm not going to mention those names because I think those guys eventually, I think Johnny Klein will make maybe more appearances next year for the first team. Same thing with the young guys, Miggy and Caden Glover especially. I mean, if you're being realistic, that Faisal Batash forward, I mean, had an incredible end to the season. We could always do with more goal scoring threat. That would be interesting. The other thing I have to say is Michael Wenzel, the German center back that we had signed. He had an incredible season, also captain of the team. So depending on how some of these contracts shake out at the end of the year, because we have a lot of guys that are termed at the end of this season, just with how things shook out for this first year for us, which makes sense. Got to give yourself flexibility. I could see some of those guys, making the challenge or jumping up. I mean, look what happened last year. Kyle Hebert, not on the radar at all for City first team, at least in my opinion. If people are going to say that, I mean, great, you had some good resources, good wherewithal, but there was guys that made that jump that were not expected to. So, it would not shock me to see some of these names that we haven't even really heard too much of yet make the jump.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see maybe one or two, but I think honestly we are already having the good problem of having too many guys that are healthy and ready to play right now, to where we're leaving a guy or two off the bench that we're not typically seeing. So, like, I think Miggy would be one that could possibly sneak back in and be on the bench, but I don't think we're going to see any of the guys specifically from City 2, at least for the playoffs this year. But very excited for next year.
And let's move on to Vancouver. So Vancouver preview on the way here. Vancouver, just a reminder, this is the MLS iteration of this club that began play in 2011. They were the 17th team in the league as an expansion team. I guess kind of an expansion team. The name Vancouver Whitecaps, this is actually the third installment of that. They were in USSF, United States Soccer Federation, Division II, playing in Vancouver before making the jump up to the MLS. In the 2012 season, they were the first Canadian team ever to make the MLS Cup playoffs. They've won 2 Canadian championships, which is like a kind of a US Open Cup, but Canadian style. So MLS, Canadian Premier League, Canada League One. And those were won in 2015 and 2022. And some fun St. Louis connections here, Justin. That was our boy Jake Nerwinski's latest club. He was a free agent. They did not re-sign him. I think he still has pretty good relations, though. Doesn't have much bad blood for the club. I think he's pretty excited to go out and play against them here on Wednesday. But he played for them for 5 seasons, from 2017 to 22, after being selected by them in the Super Draft. So it was a reminder to me that he's still pretty young as well. And then Simon Betcher, SLU Billiken grad, 2022 Super Draft pick, number 16. 4 goals, 1 assist. My bummer of this, Justin, was I was going back through and combing through our old stuff when we were talking about him on game 13. So a long time ago, 20 games ago now, he had just netted his 4th goal. And that was all in a very quick succession. And he was the fastest to get 4 goals in the MLS ever. And he has not scored since then. But I think part of that will come down to some of the key players that we'll get to in a second.
Yeah, I would agree, but still an incredible stat to have and just something he can hold on for who knows how long. I mean, 4 goals in 87 minutes is absolutely absurd. I feel like you're not going to see that again for a very long time. But specifically when we played them last, what happened? So it was all the way back on what was that, May 27th, when we took a 3-1 dub there. And that was a game that, Jake, that you actually got to take Maggie and Will to. And so I was not there in person, but got to stream it. But I mean, the first goal that we have, if you guys don't remember it, go back and look at it. The Leuven free kick from 50 yards out. Who knows? I mean, it was probably a ball in, but it curls right into the upper 90, and it absolutely the place just erupted on that. Oh. And then after that, he also had he was trying to get a ball in and assist, and the center back was running back, tried to flick it. I don't know. I think he tried to flick it up, and he flicked it back into his own net as the keeper was coming out. Didn't think the goalie was going to, or didn't think the defender was going to get it. But the most important goal in this game, Miggy in the 90th +4, hammers it home, puts his hands on his head, could not believe that he scored. The kid had to go to high school literally 36 hours later on Monday morning at Pattonville. Just an unbelievable time for him.
God, I was feeling, I mean, that was unreal. That picture of him knee slide is just put it in the Louvre. But I just digging again back into all the nostalgic memories from this game. At that time, we became the fastest expansion team to 25 points. Fast forward now, we're just sitting number 1 seed in the West and potentially could break the expansion team record for the inaugural season points gathered. We're only 2 points away from that right now. And their head coach, Vanni Sartini, very animated guy, and we'll talk about him in a second. he was the king of complaining after that game about the refs. Said it's hard to win when the other team is 12 men. I'm pretty sure he was not suspended, but fined for that. But I mean, like, wah, Vanny, like, oh my God, everyone gets the bad referee performance here and there. What's happened since for them? They did make one bigger acquisition, I would say. About 3 weeks ago, they assigned a free agent forward, Junior Hoylett, who is a vet of a striker. He's got over 500 appearances at club level, about 150 of those I saw in the Premier League. And he's the joint assist leader for the Canadian men's national team, played all 3 matches for them at Qatar. So he's a guy that was without a club, before that. So you don't know how fresh or in form he is playing. He did get in the last match, but he is a guy that has a big name and a big presence. He is a big forward. So we will likely see at least a bit of him.
Yeah, I will say, Jake, you missed out on this when you were talking about their coach. You could have said, like, hey, Will did less crying at the game than the coach
did.
Himself.
Will was great.
Will did great that game. Mm-hmm. And I think it's our most liked picture with Will with his little headphones on, too.
Why not?
Talking about them and how they've done this season. So they're 11-10-10. Their home record is 7-3-5, away 4-7-5. They have 51 goals for, which is 7th most, and 2nd most in the West behind us. And then and then they have 47 goals against, which is 9th least. So pretty average when you think about it. And you're looking at the standings right now. They're currently sitting in the 6th spot with 43 points. But I talked to you about this, Jake. I still think it's absurd that we are the only team in the West to clinch a playoff spot. It's just been absolutely nuts. Now looking at the standings after the LAFC game, Real Salt Lake is in 2nd place. Like, there is the only things that have actually happened in the West is we've clinched and Colorado's eliminated. The other 12 teams are still in the hunt. So looking at that, Vancouver is only 2 points up on being in the 9th spot. So it's absolutely a ton to play for in all these rest of these games. So how have they done against any of these other playoff teams that we're looking at? In June, they tied Cincy 1-1 at home. They beat LAFC at LAFC 3-2. In July, they had a 2-3 loss at home versus Seattle. September, as we get closer here, they had a 4-1 loss at Houston. And then they just drew DC United in their most recent game, 2-2.
Yeah, and we can kind of speed run through some of their magic number, but you kind of spoiled the story already. A lot to play for in the West. I think Decision Day is going to be a lot of fun to watch, especially because we don't have a dog in the fight. Like, we're just going to watch this and see what unfolds. And yeah, we might root for certain teams to win out and maybe play against us, but it's going to be fun. The West has been tight, man. It's been a lot of fun to see that level of competition. But yeah, Decision Day will really have a lot of ramifications.
I want to speed through. We've done the points per match magic number throughout the regular season. Now we're down to the minimal amount of games. I'm going true magic number for these guys. For them to clinch the wild card spot, this would be assuming everybody wins out. They would need 6 points. And I know it's not possible for everybody to win out. I'm not taking the time to see like who plays who and what that would be. They would need 6 points in their final 3 games. So they have a maximum of getting 9 points. And I would say for our magic number calculation, for true magic number, for them to hold the 7th spot, they would need 8 points. And so it seems pretty high right now, but there is an absolute ton to play for because honestly, if they lose this game and 2 teams behind them win, they're out of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. And then they have some good talent that's really had some solid seasons for them. Or at least this season has been great to see. There are 2, I would say, forwards they play in Brian White and Ryan Gauld. To start with Brian White, this guy's an American, 27-year-old American, was drafted by the Red Bulls organization. He just showed out in the USL prior to that, earned a spot on the first team with the Red Bull, and then went to Vancouver to really just get solid minutes and be their guy. Since then, he's played 26 plus games in each season since he arrived. This season, 14 goals, 4 assists, leads the team in XG, shots on target. He's having a massive season, and he's 1 goal out of the Golden Boot race in MLS right now. So having a heck of a season, he'll want to get on the score sheet against us to continue that. And then Ryan Gauld, another big name guy, 27-year-old as well. He's a Scottish designated player for them. Stock has risen a lot since he arrived from the Portuguese 2nd tier. He had experience in the 1st tier and also in the Scottish Premier League. This season, he's doing it on both ends. 11 goals, 11 assists. Justin, you pulled a fun stat here. 7th most in the MLS for goal contributions. So you talk about impact player. This is their guy.
And when I was doing that, Jake, it threw me off that now Leuven is 2nd in the MLS in assists with 14. But honestly, and we'll talk about it later with MVP stuff, but Acosta having 15 goals and 13 assists is just absolutely absurd for someone. So looking incredible there. I will say their other guy that we should look out for is Pedro Vite. The 21-year-old Ecuadorian, he's a perfect example of how the MLS is being used as developmental ground for South Americans wanting more exposure. He only played one full professional season before coming here. I'm not even going to try to say that name, Jake. For 4 goals and 31 starts, he leads the team, and then second in XG or XA, so expected assists per game.
And we already talked about some honorable mentions. Simon Betcher, obviously. Richie Larea is another guy that logs a lot of minutes for them. He's another Canadian men's national team guy. And then Yohei Takaoka was the goalkeeper they signed from Japan in the offseason from the J1 League, which is Japan's kind of premier league. And they were the champions. And he was coming from Yokohama. So a lot of solid players that they kind of rest a lot of their expectations on. And style-wise, we talked about head coach Vanni Sartini already in his complaining, but he is an Italian manager promoted internally by the club back in August of 2021 after they fired their head coach. He's a guy that prefers a 3 in the back system typically. So you're going to see them set up like that. He also likes to play Gauld and White sort of as the striker and second striker type system, and let Gauld kind of have a lot of freedom to run around and draw up, nightmare scenarios for defenders. And he's dangerous from everywhere. The formations I've seen them playing most recently is like a 3-5-2 or a 3-1-4-2. They do change it a lot based on the matchup. So don't be surprised if you see something different for us. But really, it all comes down to this organized system that they used is kind of based on zonal type marking. So marking space versus men and high pressing. They are quick and direct in their style of play in terms of attacking. And they can break through the middle of the field and really lean on a guy like Ryan Gauld to just play make. He's like a Leuven, but I'd say a little bit more attack minded. He's just got that final pass and that exceptional vision that really drives their team. He's created double the next guy's chances for Vancouver. I think he's created 73 this season. The next is 34. So he is their chance creator. He is the lifeblood of their team. Even though you do see a guy like Brian White who's able to finish and probably benefit a lot from that service.
The one thing I will say is, so they have 51 goals for, is 7th most in the MLS, but they are an attacking-minded team. They are top 10 in shots on target, and they are number 4 in corner kicks. So I know that you have a note here, Jake, that they like to attack through a middle and cross and shoot a lot. And those stats back it up when you look about it across the entire MLS, and they're second most in goals for behind us in the West.
Yep. And so trends and storylines ahead of this game for them, we already talked about a little bit, but they're sitting 6th. Even on points with Portland, but Portland has 1 game in hand and the tiebreaker currently locked up on them. So they're 3 points out of 2nd, but also 6 points out of 10th. So they're very close to not being in the playoffs, but also very close to being at a home field advantage. So on a poor run, though, I'd say right now, in my opinion, 9 games played since Leagues Cup, 3-3-3. So they're not getting the business done clearly enough. They haven't won since they beat Toronto, which we know isn't the hardest thing to do on September 16th. Strengths-wise, we talked about it. Chance creation, their finishing ability. They do finish the chances they create from themselves. They are very aggressive, especially up top, and try to create errors and interceptions out of the opponent's defenders. They counter a lot, and their attacking set pieces are phenomenal. Last 5 at home for them. Lost, win, lost, draw. And they usually average about 1.73 points per match at home, which is a pretty solid home form, I would say, with a plus 13 goal differential.
Yeah, I will say, and then looking at their offense specifically, their XG of a 1.61 per 90 is number 4 in the MLS, and they average 1.65 goals per game, which is number 7. We're talking about this is a pretty high-powered offense, and their home form is even stronger. So their XG at home of 1.84 is number 3, 31 of their 51 goals for at home. 22% of those goals for between the 16th and 30th minute, and the 46th to 60th. So looking at in the first half and then just beginning the second half, and then 18% are beginning and last 15 minutes of the game. So I will say they score about a goal every 43 minutes. So like we said, just about almost 2 goals a game there. 49 of their 51 goals are inside of the 18 with 13 headers, only 2 outside of the 18, which I feel is very low for the MLS there. They're 9th in shots on target. Their shortest average shot distance in the MLS of 16.4 yards as well. So like we said, very strong in attacking, and they are very much looking to just go directly at you and rip some shots.
Yeah, and it's clear when you look at their goal-creating actions, how they get to those. They're number 1 in follow-up shots that lead to goals and defensive actions that lead to goals. And then they're number 2 from set pieces. So very dangerous in live play, both in follow-up shots and defensive actions, forcing errors out of back lines. And then number 2 on direct free kicks, corner kicks, what have you. basically all dead balls. Possession, not crazy, about 49%. They're top 10 in progressive passes, so they can really play some insightful or incisive passes, especially via a guy like Ryan Gauld. Top 10 in medium and long passes, so they play a little bit longer type distance passes, but they play obviously the very short distance goals. They have the most passes and crosses in the penalty area, and then crosses in general in the MLS. So this is a team that's very comfortable in and around the 18-yard box. They're knocking it around. They're playing those cutback crosses. They're serving crosses in from deep. They really do a lot of their damage close in on net and do not leave the goalkeeper with much chance. So I'm hoping that we defensively can step up our play here, because I think they're going to cause us some serious issues in the back. But you know what? Let's learn here and not learn in the playoffs.
Exactly, and we'll talk about it as we get into the starting 11. But I think we're going to have a rotated lineup, so it'll be interesting to see how some guys that don't typically play together, how that chemistry works out and how their legs are. Jake, I was smiling real quick because I did want to give a call out real quick on that screenshot of the tweet that you sent me. St. Jimmy JVL Stick on Twitter. He said, "I love this podcast. Jake and Justin are great. I do wish Justin would learn what XG actually is and what it means. He always says he hates it, but he clearly doesn't know what it is. I know what XG is. I played soccer. I just don't agree with it. I think it never really lines up with how I think it should go. And maybe that's just a stats. I'm a big numbers guy, but I'm not a big XG guy. But just wanted to give a quick call out.
Maybe one day, Justin. We'll get you on.
Yeah, Jake, why don't you just sit me down and teach me soccer?"
Speaking of XG, they create the second most of it from open play, and they are top 10 in 10-plus pass sequences and build-up attacks. So this is a dangerous team, especially very, very high octane on attacking. Defensively, I'd say they're a little bit more par for the course. Their expected goals against over the course of the season is number 13. They average 1.40 goals against. Expected goals against per game, and they are slightly underperforming by allowing 1.52 goals against per game, which gets them about 19th in the MLS. At home, they're a little bit more stout, though. They bring that number up to 1.13 expected goals against, and they've only allowed, which is, by the way, third in the MLS, and they've only allowed 18 of their 47 goals against at home. The one thing I'll leave you with here before I kick it over to you here, Justin, is it was hard to find when they're most vulnerable in defense, because basically the middle chunk of the game from the 31st minute to the 75th. So like the first half hour and the last 15 minutes, take those out of the equation. The middle chunk of the game, 31 to 75, they concede over 3/4 of their goals in that time. So look to hit them at the end of the first half. The beginning of the second half, I feel like, is when we are going to be able to strike against them. Not that I have any worries about us striking against teams. I think we can do it whenever, but it's weird. I've never seen that type of centralization of goal spread like that. So look to hit this team in the middle.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, I usually try to find like additional bets as we talk through it, just based on feel. I don't even know how to bet that. It's just like these guys are looking forward to halftime and then they come out slow. So yeah, just something to note, though. It's a good stat to have there. They're number 4 in tackles in the MLS. We're number 1. And then especially when you look at this, they're the 4th most, they allow the 4th most shots, 5th most XG, and tied for most goals against from set pieces as well. So that is one thing that we can look at to hit them on there. They're bottom 3 in save percentage and clean sheets with only 6 clean sheets. And then you have the post shot XG minus goals against is a negative, almost a point, or -1, essentially suggesting their goalkeeper is below average and actually stopping shots.
Yeah. That's how we round this out. I would say let's talk about, we talked about all of their stats, all of their key players, their formation, their style. Let's talk about how we can beat them. And I think you got to start with, there's going to be heavy rotation in this game. I mean, I think you've got to be smart with it. But I do think we're not going to field anywhere near our best 11. And I think generally 2 things. One, this team, whoever it is, has to play a full 90 minutes performance against Vancouver. They don't have a half where they're particularly weak in. So we do need to play a full 90. And I feel like we've been guilty of falling short a couple times, especially in the second half. Also, they do a lot of drawing at home. 1-1 is the most common scoreline at home, but 1 in 5 games at home for them ended 1-1. So they haven't been that great at home. They've been good. But I do think there's an opportunity here for us to come away with a point, and that would tie us for the expansion record on points. Not that should be like a big goal of ours. We've already accomplished so much. But a couple kind of general things to keep an eye on. And then we'll pivot into offense. I said it, Justin, here. Set pieces. We talk about it a lot, but especially here in this game, set piece attacking for us. Vancouver has 3 free kick goals against, which is the most in the MLS, and 7 corner kick goals against, which is the third in the MLS. We have so much threat we generate from those. We have to be lethal on those on Wednesday night to be effective.
Yeah, I will say not only with that, but they have, what is it? You have their defenders have the top 10 or their number 10 or top 10 in errors leading to an opponent's shot there. So that's perfect for when we're talking about our press. And I think we're going to have a lot of guys with the rotated lineup on pressing them. And then when you get that chance, counter them and finish ruthlessly. I know that's one thing that, especially with some of these guys, once we get this chance, this team doesn't like to give up a ton of actual chances unless it's a free kick. But I would say if it's in open play, get the chance, put it away, get back, and let's do it again.
Yep, I agree. And defensively, they're going to have their work cut out for them, especially for a rotated defense. Don't give them anything simple, especially in and around the penalty area. Free kicks, PKs, God forbid. Stay on your feet. They have drawn 6 penalty kicks this season, which is tied for the 3rd most. They're looking for the contact. Don't give them anything. Make them earn it. Move the ball quickly. If it's John Bell, if it's Josh Yarrow, whoever it is on the back line, they're going to press you. They're going to put you under pressure, and you're going to have to play quickly. And here's my thing. If it feels uncomfortable, clear the ball. Clear your lines. Don't be a hero. We're not looking to lose this game on our own doing. Let's make them try to beat us to actually have them get a W in this game. Also, put your bodies in the line. They take a lot of short-range type shots. Jump in front of things, throw a leg out, win those aerial duels on crosses and set pieces because they generate a lot of threat from there. I don't know who's me playing, Justin. We'll talk about it here in, I guess, 1 second. But, someone's got to shut down Ryan Gauld. They're going to be starting their best 11 because they need these points here. Ryan Gauld is the guy to watch for.
I would say the biggest thing for us, and as you say that, get these block shots, get a clean sheet. That would be huge if we could somehow go up there and get a clean sheet. These guys are going to get frustrated. They're going to start pressing. We'll counter them right there. See if we can get out of there with a 1-0 dub or something like that. But, Jake, before we get into starting 11s, I'm going to do a couple quick plugs. If you're listening to this, let's do a plug for ourselves first this time. If you're listening to this, go down, smack that like button, hit subscribe so when you know when we're going live on any of these post games or these post games, pre games, anything that we do. Any of the interviews that we have as well, go hit that, like, subscribe, leave reviews on Apple and Spotify as well, or wherever you get your podcasts. And my favorite one, Soul Juice. Go to souljuice.com, get yourself some juice for 20% off. If you don't like to order online, you like to go into the store, and because that's not common anymore, you got Deerberg's, Sam's coming out for another one. I keep saying it. We'll drop it when we can drop it, but get to souljuice.com, 20% off using the code BALLWATCHING. Last thing I'll say, Jake, the pitch. It's going to be a late one on Wednesday night. We don't kick off until 9:30. I might just go there for dinner ahead of the game and then go home, but I will be at the pitch, get some drinks, get some of that crab rangoon dip with the lobster, everything there, frozen Irish coffee. Go see our coasters that we have there as well. The pitch is phenomenal, and I cannot wait to be doing more with them this fall.
Absolutely, Justin. Great calls there. And we got a tough task ahead of us here. And so does Coach Carnell on this starting 11. I don't know. I put out some feelers last night to get people's thoughts as to where I could see us playing an entirely new 11 potentially in this game. But the 11 that I put out there was people, and I don't even know if we start with Roman Berkey. I think Berkey will play because he wants to have that MVP-like season and play all the minutes, and he leads, like you said, the MLS in minutes right now. But otherwise, I'd say if he wasn't having this great of a season, we'd probably start Lund in this game. But I think the back line will be Hebert. Someone even said John Nelson could come out of retirement to play in this game. And I say retirement because he's just been kept on ice ever since those 1 or 2 mistakes he made back early in the middle of part of the season. His contract's expiring. So I think the coaching staff's already kind of looking for, that next option. Obviously, Anthony Marcanic comes in and takes that as well. But I'm seeing Hebert, probably John Bell, and Josh Yarrow in the middle. Assuming full health, of course, and then Akil Watts resuming his role at right back. Justin, any thoughts on that back line?
Agree with the back line. I actually think we're going to go with Lund. I don't think Roman cares about the MVP season. I think he could use a little bit of a break. The only way that he wouldn't is if it's a mindset thing for him. He's like, hey, I'm healthy. I'm playing great. Let me continue to do it. Let's not bench me. Instead of Akil on the back right, I'm going to Nowinski. He's going to play against his old team. I think he's going to be fired up for it. I think Carnell would like to give him that.
I like that idea because other comments we saw last night was using Akil again in Blum's spot, which we've tried this season, not to the best of results, but I guess when you're rotating, sometimes you really have to commit to it. So maybe Akil Watts pushes up into central defensive midfield. Jake Nerwinski slots in it right back. In the middle of the midfield, though, I'm going to go Jared Stroud on the left. He didn't start last game. I think he's fresh enough to come on and make an impact. I would like to see Rasmus Alm play on the right, assuming that he is back to health and he has not gotten minutes recently. And then ideally, I would also like to have Tomas Ostrak leading the line from a central attacking midfielder perspective or a number 10. And then maybe a guy like Nico and Celio up top. I think that would be kind of exciting, but that just gives all of these guys more minutes and it rests a lot of our key players ahead of what's going to be another 2-week break. So I still think that team could pose danger.
I think we absolutely can. I think regardless of the team that we're throwing out there, we can always be dangerous just because of the rotations that we've had. I do think that we give Celio a full 90 here, or at least a starting position, just because I think him and Nokvi Thorson, just because I feel like Nokvi ever since coming over, I think he's had one start, but has not had a whole lot of minutes there.
Yeah.
So I would like to see him go a little bit more. So maybe if we can get him a start, I'd give Stroud maybe a little bit of a rest, knowing that we're going to be playing him into the rest of the season as well. Looking at Thorson, he's had one start, played in 8 games for 244 minutes. I would like to see a little bit more out of him there.
Let's move into predictions and bets here. Predictions, I'm going to go ahead and predict a 2-2 draw for us. I think there's going to be goals in this game, and you'll see that in my bets here as I go down to it. But City is plus 295 in this game. Vancouver minus 130. The draw at plus 295 as well. The over-under set at 2.5, over at minus 170, so really juicy there. And the under at 2.5, plus 135. My bet of the game, I would say, that I'm pretty confident on is a parlay again. I'm going back to the well. Both teams to score and over 2.5. I think it's going to hit a little bit earlier on in this game. But both teams to score hits 65% of the time between these two teams, and the over 2.5 hits 61% of the time. And that's at minus 130 right now, like I said. But I still think that feels like a pretty much of a lock for me. Otherwise, you got to look at double chance as well. Got to have faith in the team. A tie would be more than enough for this team, especially with rotation. And that's at even money right now, plus 100. So I'm also tempted by that.
So I'm going to be waiting for the lineup to drop before I put my actual bets in. But a prediction, Jake, I'm going to do it for the first time this year. I'm going with the 2-1 loss, just because I really do think that, and I'm not a big fan of the rotation here, but we've clinched the West. There's no reason to try to push these guys. If we had a full week in between our last game on Saturday and this game, then maybe you play a little bit more of the starters. But having them go back out there 3 days later, I just don't think is. And with all of this travel, I couldn't even tell you where Vancouver is. But the fact that it's at 9:30 p.m., I'm assuming it's very far west.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to have a pretty much rotated team. And so for bets for me, I'll probably just be doing like a sprinkle on like a someone anytime once they get on the field. And then I'll probably take the double chance, because I think once the lineups drop, you're going to see us absolutely skyrocket as a money line bet to like a plus 400 once we realize that we're not going to be starting a whole lot of the starters here.
That is your first loss prediction, I think, of this season. Wow.
I think it's both of our first loss.
I predicted the draw, and I have.
No, I'm saying I don't think you've had. I think for the podcast as a whole, first loss prediction period.
I try not to, because I mean, who wants to be that guy? But I guess you want to be that guy today, Justin.
Well, there we go, Jake. Well, I'm just trying to be realistic. So when we lose this game and I bet correctly, it's like an emotional hedge.
All right. Well, let's manifest something better for Wednesday night. And yeah, 9:30. I think Vancouver's British Columbia, and it's like legitimately northwest of like Seattle. So it's very, very far away for these guys. Also, yeah, super long flight as well. But for everyone watching the game Wednesday night, 9:30 on Apple Season Pass. Should be a fun one. Everyone drink some coffee, do whatever you can to stay up. It's going to be quite the interesting fixture, especially with the rotated 11, but exciting to see some guys get some minutes and see what they can do out there. I mean, everyone's looking to lock up some level of minutes or a look for Carnell heading into the playoffs. So a lot to be won out there for us, especially in terms of personnel. So hoping we come out with the dub, lock up the record if we can, but you know what? We already have so much to celebrate this season as we head into the playoffs. But until Wednesday night and until afterwards, we will do a recap later this week, and then look to take a little bit of a break, at least fixture-wise, until Seattle at home. But this has been a fun run-in here, Justin, and we'll be circling back with you all. Like I said, the end of the week, do a little hopefully celebratory show. We shall see. But everyone have a great rest of your week until then, and